Hello everyone. Welcome to Coffee, Love, and Books. I'm Michelle, and today I'm going to be doing a review on the Giver series. Sadly, I don't have the 3 other physical books, and I actually haven't read The Giver in a long time. So, bear with me. But, wow, that series. So many mixed feelings. I just don't know how to feel. Like, alright. Basically, if you've never read the Giver series, it's this dystopia. Like, I don't even know what to call it. What genre is this series? Like, the first book will give you every indication that it is a dystopia, and I would say it's kind of almost a dystopian fantasy. But anyways, this series starts with a book in this one society where it's very much communist. Everything is controlled. No one feels any intense emotions like love. They're all extremely contented, which is a really cool discussion. That's why it has the Newbery Award, because it is just, it's an intense discussion about whether it's okay to take away people's feelings if that gets rid of things like war. And it follows the main character, Jonas, as he discovers what feeling and seeing things is really like. And it's a great book. It's awesome. Everyone, like, this is such an amazing book. It's middle grade and it's so intense, and the discussion is so deep. And it's very well loved. But then I discovered there's the rest of the series, and since this book ends on a really intense cliffhanger, you don't really quite, it's one of those cliffhangers where it just like fades away. You're like, oh yeah, they're okay, but no, wait, what happens to them? And come to find out, Lois Lowry, although I believe this was once intended to be a single book, she wrote more, 3 more. She did more to this Giver series, and I was like, I'm gonna read that because I want to know what happens to Jonas and baby Gabe and just all the stuff. So, as my reviews tend to go, I will be doing my main like and my main dislike, spoiler free, and I only have 3 likes and dislikes for this particular series, but last time I had 5. So let's get into it. I'm going to do the other 2 with spoilers because I kind of need to spoil some of the series if I'm gonna really give it justice, because man, wow, this is really a crazy series. Okay, let's go. So my main like for this entire series is just the different societies we get to explore. That actually sounds really reminiscent of My Great Hunt main like. I loved these different societies, and how in Jonas's, I think Jonas's is probably the most interesting because we haven't heard a lot about that. But in the second book, we follow a character named Kira who lives in a very kind of a very paleo society, I guess you could call it. Very much survival of the fittest. If you are crippled, if you have any deformity, you are considered basically, like, you're basically killed in her society. Much like Jonas's, actually, which is crazy. All these societies seem to be seeking perfection. But then, as we go on to the later books, we find more forgiving and loving societies that still have their issues. They're still not perfect, but they're much better than the first 2 we get to explore. So those societies were just really interesting to explore. They, again, provoked a lot of thought. They were just really, really enveloping. You began to understand these characters and how their societies had made them believe what they believed. And it was really thought-provoking and really good. Okay, so my main dislike was that this series was so confusing. Like, what? I need to get into spoilers for this one later after we exit the spoiler-free section. But man, was it confusing. What? The ending didn't explain really much of what this was. I would say it explains everything from The Giver that was really confusing. Not all of it, most of it. But the other three books introduce a lot of questions, and book 4 does not answer it really as much as I would have loved to see. So, yeah, that's all I can say right now without really going into spoilers. So, spoilers. You have been warned. Okay, so over the course of these books, we get introduced to a lot of different villages, 4 to be precise, and we don't really, in the first book, everything's kind of, there aren't as many questions. The main question is, what happens to Jonas and Gabe after they get to Elsewhere? And that is answered in book 3. The thing about it is that in book 2 we get introduced to the fact that Kira and 2 other kids in her village have powers. And later we find that Maddie, who is the protagonist of book 3, who's also in book 2, also has powers. All these kids, I think every protagonist except protagonist number 4, they all have powers. We don't know why. That is never once explained, but they do, and they're these crazy gifts that are really, it's actually really good. It's magic that comes out of price. But my main problem was, why is there magic? This is presumably our world. We never find out what happens to our world to make it this way. And actually that's my dislike number 2, so I'll talk about that later. But the magic stuff is never explained. The forest is never explained. It makes no sense. And that would have been okay if it were a fantasy, but it's not necessarily set up that way. So we have no clue why these kids have powers or anything. It's never once explained. Alright, so my number 2 is... Oh yeah, I already kind of explained this, which is sad. But my second the thing I really appreciated about this series was how Lewis Lowry utilizes these very corrupt villages to explore morality. Is it okay to have communism like that if it gets rid of war? Is it okay to get rid of hate if it also extinguishes love? Should all these things happen? And in the second book, she explores a lot of the things like the Greeks used to do, where they would leave deformed children out on the rocks to die. Kira has a limp, and she has a bad leg, and she was supposed to be left, but her mother couldn't have, her husband had died, so she would never have another child, so they made an exception. And she is raised the only person in her village who is deformed. And you really see how that creates a more compassionate soul in her, but she still is okay with leaving babies out to die, with leaving people out as long as it isn't her. And you see her kind of develop over time to become more compassionate. And I thought it was really interesting commentary on how your environment makes you what you are, and how, yes, people can break free from that. That is also a huge theme. But you see even Jonas, before the Giver gives him before the Giver gives him the knowledge, you see him being okay with a lot of the things that happen in his society, because that's all he's ever known. And it was just a really interesting commentary. And when you get to book 3, where people are now thinking they are all kind of together, like they're all the kind of outcasts from the villages, the people who couldn't make it where they were, left and came to this village, and they come to this place where Jonas happens to be the leader. And it was just really cool to see the people break free from that certain belief system. And as we move on in the series, we see how the people are really thinking for themselves now and such. So the themes were awesome. That was long, I'm sorry. And my third, oh wait, no. Second dislike. Wow. My second dislike is that the Trademaster. Oh my word. What was this? It wasn't introduced until the third book. And he was vanquished in the fourth book through words. It was a very middle grade thing, which I guess I'm okay with because it's a middle grade series. I'm not middle grade. I get it. But what? It felt like, if you've ever seen VeggieTales, that scene where the lie is big and like a scary monster, and then Junior Asparagus is like, I broke the plate. And it was like that. He was like, I'm gonna defeat you with how you failed, and then he like melts into nothingness. And I was like, really? This is the big bad guy who has, presumably, I don't know for certain, that guy is the one who, I guess, made the world the way it is, because he seems to really thrive off of the corrupt societies and how people are being left as basically helpless, and he feeds on that. So I guess he's the one who made the world that way. But he's basically a magic, like dark magic itself, not actually a person, but literally just darkness. And it makes no sense. We never get why he's kind of like, no, I don't know why he's in there. Except to just make Claire's journey harder. I don't know. He seems like a really bad guy. It was weird and unnecessary, and it kind of added to that weird, ambiguous fantasy element that we never knew was there until, like, really book number 3. Okay, my third and last was, oh, I love this part. There are 4 different perspectives. No 2 books have the same character perspective. Book 1 and 2 are completely unrelated until they tie together in book 3. And there we get to see how these different characters from different books, you get to see Jonas in book 1 from his perspective, and then in book 3 you get to see him from another character's perspective. And then in book 4 you get to see him from even another character's perspective. And I love that. We got to see the characters we know and love through other people's eyes, and that just brought a whole depth to it, and I loved it. It was awesome. And my final dislike was, oh yeah, the characters, I loved them, but a lot of the time, especially with Claire in book 4, their decisions didn't seem very characteristic, and they just felt forced and unnatural and weird and very middle grade-y. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe if you appreciated this review. I know it was all over the place. I'm sorry. But I've had very mixed reviews on this series, and I hope that cleared some things up for you if you have already read it, if you want to read it. I would love to speculate with you in the comment section down below, because I have no clue how this series was supposed to, like, what happens after this? How did the world get this way? If you have thoughts, be sure to let me know. I post videos every Saturday. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week. Bye.